इस किस्म के आदमी थे। मरहूम शरीफुद्दीन पीरज़ादा के साथ बहुत इनका ताल्लुक था, देखे जाते थे, तो उसकी वजह से इनका एक्सेस था पावर सर्कल्स में। और लंदन में मेरी एक शख्स से बात हुई जो पाकिस्तान डेलीगेशन का हिस्सा था नेगोशिएशंस में। उसने कहा कि सारे इनको बड़ी अच्छी तरह जानते थे और सारे बड़े कंफर्टेबल थे। तो जब जेरेमी ने कहा कि नो प्रॉब्लम, ये जितनी आपकी लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं मैं इन प्लेस कर दूंगा, तो वो सब ने कहा हाँ ठीक है, और खड़क करके उसको $1.5 मिलियन का जो पहला चेक था पकड़ा दिया। एक और इंटरेस्टिंग बात, जब हमने ये केस में फैसला पढ़ा, हमारे पास जब डॉक्यूमेंट्स आए, तो जो सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट है ये बड़ी ज़बरदस्त चीज़ है माशाल्लाह। सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट के अंदर बड़ी जगह ब्लैंक थी कि जिन्होंने नई कंपनी बनाई हुई थी ब्रॉडशीट कोलोराडो वगैरह, उसके डेट ऑफ इनकॉर्पोरेशन ब्लैंक, ओनरशिप ब्लैंक, जो टेक्निकल चीज़ें थी वो ब्लैंक्स थे। हम समझे शायद हमारे पास वो ड्राफ्ट ही वो वाला आया है जिसमें ब्लैक आउट किया हुआ है। लेकिन जब हमने ये केस पढ़ रहे थे, ये जो कोलोराडो वाला केस है, तो इसमें इंटरेस्टिंगली पूरा उन्होंने पॉइंट किया हुआ लॉयर्स ने कि ये जो सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट है इसमें तो ये चीज़ें ही नहीं है। सवाल ये है जो नैब की तरफ से जिन लोगों ने साइन किया और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान की तरफ से, क्या उनको ये नज़र नहीं आया कि सेटलमेंट एग्रीमेंट में जिस कंपनी को वो पैसे पकड़ा रहे हैं उसकी इनकॉर्पोरेशन डेट नहीं है, उसके शेयर होल्डर्स का नाम नहीं है, उसका एड्रेस वगैरह इस किस्म की चीज़ें नहीं है। बेसिक चीज़ें जो सामने प्रिंटेड होती हैं। अब कोई मुझे ये कहे कि जी जनरल अमजद से लेके नीचे तक, खैर जनरल अमजद तो जल्दी चले गए थे, तो 2008 की सेटलमेंट्स हैं, पेमेंट्स हैं, सारा कुछ है, कि 2008 के अंदर जो लोग बैठे हुए थे, या तो वो इतने नालायक हैं कि उनको बेसिक डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का नहीं पता, या वो इतने चालाक और करप्ट हैं कि उन्होंने खुल के माल बनाया। एक चीज़ तो बड़ी क्लियर है, क्वेश्चन मार्क्स सबके ऊपर हैं, चाहे वो जरदारी साहब का रोल है फाइनेंशियल, चाहे वो नवाज शरीफ फैमिली का रोल है, चाहे वो शेरपाव साहब के ऊपर एलिगेशंस हैं, इसी तरह जिसका खोलने का अच्छा चट्टा खोलता जाता है, चाहे वो जो जनरल मलिक हैं। लेकिन नाइदर सवालात से मुबर्रा ये कंपनी भी नहीं है और हमारे ये मुसावी साहब भी नहीं है। ये बड़े सवालात हैं जिस पे गवर्नमेंट को पूछना चाहिए और जिस पे डिटेल में होना चाहिए और इनका हरफ आखिर नहीं होना चाहिए। अब इनसे आगे भी हम इस पर प्रोग्राम करेंगे, बट अभी आप पहले आए सुनते हैं कि मुसावी साहब क्या कहते हैं। Good evening, Mr. Musavi, and thank you so much for joining Hum News for a little discussion. Your recent interviews have created quite a stir in Pakistan, and serious issues have come up, and the amounts are staggering, the role of NAB and other people, a lot of questions. But one of the biggest mysteries is you yourself and your company. When we tried to Google you, quite honestly, we couldn't find anything. And when we have other asset recovery firms, you have Kroll, you have Deloitte, you have others, they have proper offices, proper structures. Then we find out that this was a shell company. Why a shell company? Then what's your record of asset recoveries and all that? Because all the people who have been burned by your recent interviews, they're creating a lot of questions, raising a lot of questions about your integrity and your, what you call, expertise also. Could we start with your company?
Well, let's see what the judge said. Speculation is cheap, but going before a high court judge in England and getting the damning judgment that he gave on NAB and the government of Pakistan is not cheap. It involves thousands of hours of investigation, tens of thousands of pages of documentation and evidence. And you say we were a shell company. Our adversary was a government, a mighty government that has nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. You explain to me in that case, if any of this nonsense about we are a shell company was true, why would the High Court judge give the damning judgment that he did and give us an award?
I'll tell you why this question was posed to you. Because when we see the record, your company was incorporated a month earlier in the Isle of Man, and a month later it signs a massive contract with the government of Pakistan. So for the government to choose you, there had to be a past record. For the government to pick you up, there had to be a proven track record or something. Those two things were missing, and that's why a lot of questions are being asked. Why Broadsheet, when Broadsheet didn't have an experience, and Broadsheet was even listed there as a trading house, I believe.
Well, is that the end of the question? Would you like me to answer it?
Yeah, please.
First of all, it was my credentials. I had fought corrupt governments before. I testified before the United States Congress. Massive corruption I'd exposed in Mexico.
People who negotiated with you, I was talking to one of the lawyers, and what he said was that your other partner, Mr. Edgar Jerry James, like commonly he was called Jerry James, they said he probably was somebody who had worked with the US administration, probably had some CIA connections and all that. He was more of the security guy and the real job thing. You were more astute legally, and you were the lawyer, the legal brains behind it. And then that gentleman took you for a ride also. Then he committed suicide in mysterious circumstances. So there are a lot of questions that go begging about the company and about you and about other people. I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh on this, but genuinely, we need to know more about you and why your words should carry so much weight here.
We were the only people. There were other bidders. We were the only people who agreed to do this free of charge. Other companies were like Kroll and other investigating companies wanted to invoice on a monthly basis. We were so confident of our ability to trace, find, freeze, and repatriate stolen assets that we said to General Musharraf's government, we'll do it free of charge. In other words, if we succeed, we'll take a percentage. If we don't succeed, it's our risk. And it was a no-brainer. So those who make these libelous accusations without any information, they ought to consider that our contract was a contingency fee contract.
You said you worked with the Mexican government also. If you could just tell me what company worked there, with what name. And secondly, did you ever have a contract like this which said that even if your contract was terminated and the people mentioned in your targeted list and the government kept going after them, no matter for how long, you would still keep getting your commission? It was like, even if you weren't working on that anymore. Did you ever have another contract like this?
I'm sorry, that's a massive misrepresentation of the contract. That's not what the contract said. The contract said, with respect to the targets, the named targets on which we had started spending money and investigating the contract, the government had no right to rescind the contract. It was free to rescind the contract regarding anybody else. It's a complete, total, utter fabrication that's been misfed to journalists and the media.
Did you at any time promise NAP people or claim that you had knowledge of billions of dollars of assets and everything of Asif Zardari and Nawaz Sharif in particular? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking you. We were told that you made very tall promises, and when you were asked to come up with something, there wasn't anything. So that's when they started questioning your what you call expertise or whatever.
I didn't know the name of Mr. Asif Zardari from Adam. Nawaz Sharif I'd read about in the newspapers and all. Zardari was a opaque figure who happened to have married the late Mrs. Bhutto. Why would I know about his billions? What I did know is I know how to find stolen billions. Stolen billions is the kind of money that smells. Ordinary money doesn't smell. Stolen billion does smell. And there are ways where the thieves try to make that smell go away. It's called money laundering. It's called mechanisms that the law is beginning to catch up with them. I consider myself to be an expert on that. So the suggestion that I made representations to NAB that we would find billions and billions is a complete fabrication. What we said is it's plausible, and it has been stated in the media, that billions and billions have been stolen. If they have been stolen, as sure as eggs is eggs, we're going to find it. I never stated anything about the assets of Zardari or Sharif. What I did say at the time when the General Musharraf government were adamant they were only going to go after the Sharifs, we adamantly said we are not going to be part of a witch hunt. We're not prepared to do that. What we would like to do is we'd like to have all the previous governments. Now, what would I know about the previous governments? I mean, anybody who's got two cells in their brain would think that's an implausible suggestion. We simply said, if we have assistance and if you cooperate according to the requirements of international law, we will be able to find these. And the judgment of Sir Anthony Evans is crystal clear. We were too effective for the comfort of thieves who were running NAB and the government of Pakistan. The crooks who have plundered the government, the people of Pakistan, they got very nervous because we came too close.
जो छोटी सी ब्रेक का, प्लीज स्टे विद अस.
जिसे इश्क हुआ सब भूल गया, किया तेरा जो अपना न रहा, क्या मांगनी थी नहीं याद दुआ, दिल टूटे तो नहीं और सता, ऐ इश्क मुझे एक बात बता, क्या है
तुझे हुआ क्या है, आखिर इस दर्द की दवा क्या है.
इश्क खुदा की मर्जी, वो दिल में रहने आए, ये तुमसे दूर हुआ तो ये रोए रे.
जो गम है इश्क के नाम, जो सुख है इश्क के काम, जो गम है इश्क के नाम, जो सुख है इश्क के काम, जो नजर ना आए पर भूल न पाए दिल तेरे बिन एक पल रहने पाए.
इश्क खुदा की मर्जी, वो दिल में रहने आए, ये तुमसे दूर हुआ तो ये रोए रे. इश्क खुदा की मर्जी.
हम हर वो सवाल उठाते हैं जो सवाल बनता है, सच की तलाश मगर मुकम्मल गैर जानिबदारी के साथ. यही है हमारे उसूल, ना कोई दावा ना कोई एंगलिंग. जो असल बात है वो स्याह सफेद में आपके सामने है. हम बयान करते हैं खबर में पोशीदा बड़ी बात.
देखिए प्रोग्राम बड़ी बात 20 से जुमेरात रात 10:03 पर.
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच.
मैं कोई इंकलाबी नहीं हूं, कोई दावा नहीं है दुनिया बदलने का. आई एम जस्ट अनदर प्रोफेशनल जर्नलिस्ट डूइंग हिज जॉब फॉर द लास्ट 30 years. 3 दहाइयों से आपका और मेरा एक ताल्लुक रहा, सच का ताल्लुक, क्योंकि सच जानना आपका हक है और बताना मेरा फर्ज. आई डोंट प्रॉमिस यू द वर्ल्ड, लेकिन मेरा आपसे वादा है कि मेरी हर खबर भी सच होगी और मेरा हर तज्जिया भी गैर जानिबदार. और जहां तक बात है इंकलाब लाने की, अपनी दुनिया बदलने की, तो आप हैं ना, मिल के बदलेंगे.
देखिए प्रोग्राम ब्रेकिंग पॉइंट विद मालिक जुमे से इतवार रात 8:03 पर, सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच.
जब से पाकिस्तान बना है, भीख मांग रहे थे एनआरओ की.
बुरी तरह से हर लफ्ज रखता है कई मायने, हर चेहरे के पीछे है नई कहानी, हर बात से निकलते हैं कई सवाल जिन्हें पूछने का हौसला है सिर्फ न्यूज लाइन के पास. मैं डॉक्टर मारी जुल्फिकार खान लाती रहूंगी हर चेहरे, कहानी और सवाल से जुड़े खास जवाबात आपके अपने न्यूज लाइन पर.
देखिए प्रोग्राम न्यूज लाइन जुमे से इतवार रात 10:03 सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच.
पार्टी
बड़ा चैनल वही है जो सच को सामने लाए, बड़ा सहाफी वही जो गैर जानिबदार हो, और सच्ची खबर ही बड़ी खबर होती है, क्योंकि तजुर्बे के तनाजुर से कहीं ज्यादा है सच का वजन. मेरा आपसे यही वादा है, जो खबर दूंगा सच्ची होगी और हर तज्जिया ईमानदार और गैर जानिबदार. मेरे प्रोग्राम में सियासतदान भी होंगे और ब्यूरोक्रेट भी, और उनकी अपनी राय भी होगी और अपने ख्यालात भी, मगर सही कौन और गलत कौन, ये फैसला आपका है, क्योंकि समर अब्बास के पाकिस्तान टुनाइट में बात होगी पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तानियों की.
देखिए प्रोग्राम पाकिस्तान टुनाइट 20 से जुमेरात रात 8:03 पर, सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच.
बाज़ औक़ात ऐसा भी होता है कि आप अपनी बसेस मिस भी कर देते हैं।
हमजा, आपकी बस आ गई। बच्चों को नाश्ता देना होता है, उन्हें सुबह सुबह स्कूल जाने के लिए तैयार करना होता है, और फिर ये इरिटेशन हो रही होती है कि देर हो रही है, जल्दी करो।
और फिर यहाँ ये भी होता है कि आप जल्दी में घर से निकलते हुए जरूर कुछ ना कुछ भूल जाते हैं। मैं तो अपनी गाड़ी पर दफ्तर आती हूँ, लेकिन साकिब, आपकी चाबियां टेबल पर पड़ी हैं।
कराची में इंसानों से ज्यादा तो गाड़ियां हैं। अरे मंजिल आपके सामने है, दाएं बाएं होने से गुरेज करें। बड़े बूढ़े कहते हैं कि जमीन ले लो, सबसे सेफ इन्वेस्टमेंट है, और कुछ लोग कहते हैं गोल्ड लेना चाहिए।
सही कहते हैं वैसे। चाय जो होती है ना, गाढ़ी कड़क चाय, वो ढाबे की चाय होती है।
ढाबे की चाय, वो गंदी गंदी प्यालियों वाली?
यही तो असल चाय होती है जो गंदी गंदी प्यालियों में आपको पीने को मिले।
देखिए सुबह से आगे, पीर से जुमा, सुबह 10:03 पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
एक आम पाकिस्तानी क्या सोचता है, क्या चाहता है, कानून और सियासत को किस जाविये से देखता है, ये सवालात तहकीक के गिर्द घूमते हैं। तहकीक से राय बनती है, और जब राय और शऊर एक हो जाए तो तज्जिया जन्म लेता है। आधे अधूरे हकायक और झूठ की धूल में लिपटी सच्चाइयों में सच तलाश करना आसान नहीं। हमारे व्यूज मेकर इस झूठ के अंबार से सच्चाई ढूंढ निकालेंगे और पेश करेंगे खरा, मुस्तनिद और मुनफरिद तज्जिया एक नए अंदाज से। प्रोग्राम व्यूज मेकर्स में
देखिए प्रोग्राम व्यूज मेकर्स जरिया मारिफ के साथ पीर से हफ्ता शाम 7:03 पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
हम हर वो सवाल उठाते हैं जो सवाल बनता है, सच की तलाश मगर मुकम्मल गैर जानिबदारी के साथ। यही है हमारे उसूल, ना कोई दावा, ना कोई एंगलिंग। जो असल बात है वो स्याह सफेद में आपके सामने है। हम बयान करते हैं खबर में पोशीदा बड़ी बात।
देखिए प्रोग्राम बड़ी बात।
Keep popping up. One is Jerry James. Obviously, he was given as the chairman of the company and all. Could you tell us about his background? And the other name that keeps popping us is Tariq Fawad Malick, the same guy who was authorized later on illegally or whatever by Jerry James to collect 1.5 million on his behalf or on behalf of Broadsheep, and then we all know the legal consequences and all the things that happened. But could you tell us more about these two chaps?
Well, the judge spoke about them, and they were the co-conspirators with the government of Pakistan to defraud us, the real broadsheet. If you don't believe me, get a copy of the judgment and you will see. And then properly, this question should be addressed to NAB, which the judge found co-conspired with Mr. Malick and Mr. Jerry James to defraud us. And of course, defraud
the reason I'm asking you is Jerry James was your partner, wasn't he? So he was originally, you guys were together, so you must have known him.
Specific period we were partners, and in good faith we were working, and our paths began to digress. And as the judge says, they behaved in a way that it is tantamount to effective finding of a fraud upon us. So they may have been partners, but they became the partners of the government of Pakistan in a conspiracy to defraud Broadsheet. Don't believe me? Read the judgments.
No, that's where I picked it from. I picked it from the judgment. That's what I'm going to ask you, because since you knew the man, and then he died in mysterious circumstances, so the impression we get is somebody with a CIA background or intelligence background. He's also a mystery in there. So I thought maybe you could throw some light on it. What do you know about him? I mean, even when good times were there, was he an ex-CIA? Was he an intelligence guy? What was he?
Compared with the thieves we were investigating, he was a kindergarten child in a nursery compared with the crooks that we were investigating. So I think your attention ought to be on the people who, General Musharraf, who is not exactly a paragon of virtue at the Oxford Union, when I openly in front of the cameras asked him, what happened to NAB, General? And he said, Mr. Musavi, I was ordered to hold elections by the Supreme Court, and I did, and all the crooks came back to power. I think your focus should be, if you're looking for crooks, Jerry James was a nursery boy compared with the crooks that we were investigating. He died in poverty. He was not ex-CIA. It's a complete, utter fabrication. Jerry James was a banker. He was the president of the Private Bankers Association in his state in the United States. He had a banking license, and he was a man of considerable integrity and means. He put his life into the effort to help Pakistan, and he was driven into bankruptcy by the fraud of NAB, which Sir Anthony Evans found. It is rare. I have never, let me tell you on the camera, never in my legal or business or academic career, never have I come across a judgment in which the judge says a government and its Accountability Anti-Corruption Bureau have conspired in order to defraud the people that they have hired to go and find stolen money. I think you might want to reflect on that.
Mr. Muswi, one strange thing I find is I've talked to people who were there in the Pakistani High Commission when the settlement thing was going on. I talked to people who were there. I've tried talking to a lot of people in NAB. I've listened to all your interviews. And somehow everybody seems to have forgotten the name of any NAB officer who was involved either in the dialogues or in the transactions, and nobody seems to remember anyone. Could you remember any name of any particular person and saying, okay, these were the NAB officers we dealt with at any different stages, and then these guys might have done whatever wrong or whatever, even if you don't want to say that. But could we have any names of any NAB officers involved in this whole transactions and process?
Look, I'm not going to engage in a media trial of anybody. The presumption of innocence is an absolute prerequisite of the rule of law. And if I start making accusations against individuals on television, that would be a violation.
No, I'm not asking you to accuse anyone. All I'm saying is we would like if you can give us names of people you dealt with during your interactions. We just name that, then we can do our own things and find out whether somebody did right or wrong. Right now, when we ask NAB, they tell us, it was so long ago, we don't know. We ask everybody in this transaction, nobody mentions anybody's name. Just people who are dealing with this whole thing.
But what does that tell you? A NAB is just supposed to be the paragon of transparency and accountability, and they're hiding the names of public officials who are getting paid from the public treasury. What does that tell you?
Why don't you share the names? I mean, there's nothing wrong in that. You can tell me I dealt with Officer A, B, C, these guys. Why don't you tell us?
In a context in which I'm saying NAB was a fraudulent enterprise engaged in assisting the thieves who have milked Pakistan, anyone I mention is going to be the subject of a witch hunt. I'd rather give them a right to have a fair trial. I do not engage in a media circus. When a politicians throw mud at me, like this foolish man Shahzad Akbar had done, and I'm happy to name him and talk about him. And he has brought the damnation upon himself by being so foolish as to say that a court judgment is tantamount to an attempt at skimming money off the people of Pakistan. He's not even aware that this is taking money from NAB, which is supposed to have been, its coffers are supposed to be full, not of the taxpayers' money, they're supposed to be full of the thieves' money. So I'm hardly skimming off the taxpayer if I'm asking to be paid what the court has ordered the government of Pakistan to pay me. I mean, happy to engage in names when they've come into the public domain.
Mr. Muswi, just now you painted Mr. Jerry James in beautiful colors, that he was a man of integrity and all that. Then when you revived broadsheet and then you went for all these things, then why was a case filed in District Court, Delaware, Colorado, against the state for all the things and documents and blah, blah, and in which he is being accused of certain wrongdoings? Then why this case later in 2011?
Because we needed the documents. Jerry James, unfortunately, he broke away from us and he defrauded us. You know that. The whole point, the judge found that Jerry James, Tariq Malick, and officers of NAB and the government of Pakistan defrauded broadsheet, and that's why we needed to get the documents, the further documents which were with Jerry James, and that's why we brought a court action to secure them, and we did secure them.
You said Mr. Jerry James died in poverty. Now, even in the decision, it talks about, he got almost 3.75 million was paid in 2008 to him. So how much do you think out of that money was actually kept by him and the rest was siphoned back to corrupt NAB officers and government officials from Pakistan who were facilitating all that, because the way that deal was done, the way that settlement agreement was done, it was like everybody was in a hurry to put a lot of money in that fake transaction and make some good money. So where did the money go?
Well, first of all, it was 1.5 million. It wasn't 3.78 or anything. You better ask the people in NAB, first of all, why did they pay him? If you look at the settlement document, I can tell you a first-year law student would see that's a fraud. Broadsheet was a company in the Isle of Man. NAB went and settled via Broadsheet Gibraltar, which doesn't exist. It has never existed. There has never been a Broadsheet Gibraltar. Into a company turned up in Colorado as called Steeplechase, which had nothing to do with Broadsheet. Now, this brilliant Supreme Court advocate, Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, when he came to see me, I told him, Mr. Sufi, we cannot settle on behalf of Broadsheet because Broadsheet is in liquidation. The record on the court shows, and the judge agreed that my statement was correct and Sufi's statement was not. He did not believe Sufi. I told Mr. Sufi in plain English that Broadsheet was in liquidation. He could not settle with it. He went and settled with it. I told him Jerry James has nothing to do with Broadsheet anymore. He went and saw Jerry James. And I ask you to look at the documents of the settlement. There are sentences that are missing. There are gaps. And then the Prime Minister of Pakistan has signed that settlement document. The head of NAB has settled that document. If you wanted evidence, evidence of fraud, if you wanted evidence of fraud, just look at the document that was signed. You're absolutely right.
जी, यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी ब्रेक लगाएंगे. अब जल्दी से अपने काम करके आ जाएं. But we have got a lot more to discuss.
हम हर वो सवाल उठाते हैं जो सवाल बनता है, सच की तलाश मगर मुकम्मल गैर जानिबदारी के साथ. यही है हमारे उसूल. ना कोई दावा, ना कोई एंगलिंग. जो असल बात है वो स्याह सफेद में आपके सामने है. हम बयान करते हैं खबर में पोशीदा बड़ी बात.
देखिए प्रोग्राम बड़ी बात 20 से जुमेरात रात 10:03 पर.
हम न्यूज आगे की सोच.
मैं कोई इंकलाबी नहीं हूं, कोई दावा नहीं है दुनिया बदलने का. आई एम जस्ट अनदर प्रोफेशनल जर्नलिस्ट डूइंग हिज जॉब फॉर द लास्ट 30 years. 3 दहाइयों से आपका और मेरा एक ताल्लुक रहा, सच का ताल्लुक, क्योंकि सच जानना आपका हक है और बताना मेरा फर्ज. आई डोंट प्रॉमिस यू द वर्ल्ड, लेकिन मेरा आपसे वादा है कि मेरी हर खबर भी सच होगी और मेरा हर तज्जिया भी गैर जानिबदार. और जहां तक बात है इंकलाब लाने की, अपनी दुनिया बदलने की, तो आप हैं ना, मिल के बदलेंगे.
देखिए प्रोग्राम ब्रेकिंग पॉइंट विद मालिक जुमे से इतवार रात 8:03 पर सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज आगे की सोच.
जब से पाकिस्तान बना है, भीख मांग रहे थे एनआरओ की.
बुरी तरह से हर लफ्ज रखता है कई मायने. हर चेहरे के पीछे है नई कहानी. हर बात से निकलते हैं कई सवाल जिन्हें पूछने का हौसला है सिर्फ न्यूज लाइन के पास. मैं डॉक्टर मारी जुल्फिकार खान लाती रहूंगी हर चेहरे, कहानी और सवाल से जुड़े खास जवाबात आपके अपने न्यूज लाइन पर.
देखिए प्रोग्राम न्यूज लाइन जुमे से इतवार रात 10:03 सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज आगे की सोच.
पार्टी
बड़ा चैनल वही है जो सच को सामने लाए. बड़ा सहाफी वही जो गैर जानिबदार हो. और सच्ची खबर ही बड़ी खबर होती है, क्योंकि तजुर्बे के तनाजुर से कहीं ज्यादा है सच का वजन. मेरा आपसे यही वादा है, जो खबर दूंगा सच्ची होगी और हर तज्जिया ईमानदार और गैर जानिबदार. मेरे प्रोग्राम में सियासतदान भी होंगे और ब्यूरोक्रेट भी, और उनकी अपनी राय भी होगी और अपने ख्यालात भी. मगर सही कौन और गलत कौन, ये फैसला आपका है, क्योंकि समर अब्बास के पाकिस्तान टुनाइट में बात होगी पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तानियों की.
देखिए प्रोग्राम पाकिस्तान टुनाइट 20 से जुमेरात रात 8:03 पर सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर.
हम न्यूज आगे की सोच.
बाज़ औक़ात ऐसा भी होता है कि आप अपनी बसेस मिस भी कर देते हैं।
हमजा, आपकी बस आ गई। बच्चों को नाश्ता देना होता है, उन्हें सुबह सुबह स्कूल जाने के लिए तैयार करना होता है, और फिर ये इरिटेशन हो रही होती है कि देर हो रही है, जल्दी करो।
और फिर यहाँ ये भी होता है कि आप जल्दी में घर से निकलते हुए जरूर कुछ ना कुछ भूल जाते हैं। मैं तो अपनी गाड़ी पर दफ्तर आती हूँ, लेकिन साकिब, आपकी चाबियां टेबल पर पड़ी हैं।
कराची में इंसानों से ज्यादा तो गाड़ियां हैं। अरे मंजिल आपके सामने है, दाएं बाएं होने से गुरेज करें। बड़े बूढ़े कहते हैं कि जमीन ले लो, सबसे सेफ इन्वेस्टमेंट है, और कुछ लोग कहते हैं गोल्ड लेना चाहिए।
सही कहते हैं वैसे। चाय जो होती है ना, गाढ़ी कड़क चाय, वो ढाबे की चाय होती है।
ढाबे की चाय, वो गंदी गंदी प्यालियों वाली?
यही तो असल चाय होती है जो गंदी गंदी प्यालियों में आपको पीने को मिले।
देखिए सुबह से आगे, पीर से जुमा, सुबह 10:03 पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
एक आम पाकिस्तानी क्या सोचता है, क्या चाहता है, कानून और सियासत को किस जाविये से देखता है, ये सवालात तहकीक के गिर्द घूमते हैं। तहकीक से राय बनती है, और जब राय और शऊर एक हो जाए तो तज्जिया जन्म लेता है। आधे अधूरे हकायक और झूठ की धूल में लिपटी सच्चाइयों में सच तलाश करना आसान नहीं। हमारे व्यूज मेकर इस झूठ के अंबार से सच्चाई ढूंढ निकालेंगे और पेश करेंगे खरा, मुस्तनिद और मुनफरिद तज्जिया एक नए अंदाज से। प्रोग्राम व्यूज मेकर्स में
देखिए प्रोग्राम व्यूज मेकर्स ज़रिया मारिफ के साथ पीर से हफ्ता शाम 7:03 पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
हम हर वो सवाल उठाते हैं जो सवाल बनता है, सच की तलाश मगर मुकम्मल गैर जानिबदारी के साथ। यही है हमारे उसूल, ना कोई दावा, ना कोई एंगलिंग। जो असल बात है वो स्याह सफेद में आपके सामने है। हम बयान करते हैं खबर में पोशीदा बड़ी बात।
देखिए प्रोग्राम बड़ी बात पीर से जुमेरात रात 10:03 पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
मैं कोई इंकलाबी नहीं हूं, कोई दावा नहीं है दुनिया बदलने का। आई एम जस्ट अनदर प्रोफेशनल जर्नलिस्ट डूइंग हिज जॉब फॉर द लास्ट 30 years। 3 दहाइयों से आपका और मेरा एक ताल्लुक रहा, सच का ताल्लुक, क्योंकि सच जानना आपका हक है और बताना मेरा फर्ज। आई डोंट प्रॉमिस यू द वर्ल्ड, लेकिन मेरा आपसे वादा है कि मेरी हर खबर भी सच होगी और मेरा हर तज्जिया भी गैर जानिबदार। और जहां तक बात है इंकलाब लाने की, अपनी दुनिया बदलने की, तो आप हैं ना, मिल के बदलेंगे।
देखिए प्रोग्राम ब्रेकिंग पॉइंट विद मालिक जुमे से इतवार रात 8:03 पर, सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
जब से पाकिस्तान बना है, भीख मांग रहे थे एनआरओ की।
बुरी तरह हर लफ्ज रखता है कई मायने, हर चेहरे के पीछे है नई कहानी, हर बात से निकलते हैं कई सवाल जिन्हें पूछने का हौसला है सिर्फ न्यूज लाइन के पास। मैं डॉक्टर मारी जुल्फिकार खान लाती रहूंगी हर चेहरे, कहानी और सवाल से जुड़े खास जवाबात आपके अपने न्यूज लाइन पर।
देखिए प्रोग्राम न्यूज लाइन जुमे से इतवार रात 10:03 सिर्फ हम न्यूज पर।
हम न्यूज, आगे की सोच।
बड़ा चैनल वही है।
Are you telling me that because I talked to Mr. Sufi today and he told me that when the government was making those final settlements and all that, they had taken the lawyers out of the whole equation and he doesn't know who did what and what NAB team decided and settled the whole thing. Are you telling me that you told Emir Bilal Sufi before Pakistan government had settled with Broadsheet Colorado that they couldn't do it and that it was in liquidation and this was not possible? You told him prior to that?
I told him in April, May of 2007 when he came to see me that it could not be settled and it was not settled, it could not settle, and the issue came up in the proceedings. I invite you to look at the transcript of the hearing before Sir Anthony Evans. This was a contentious issue and NAB's lawyers did their best to convince the judge, and the judge says, on this, I'm on the side of Mr. Mousavi's evidence. It's in there in black and white. It's on the transcript and it's in the judgment. The judge accepted that I had told Mr. Sufi that the government of Pakistan could not settle with broadsheet. The judge accepted that, and I can see why it was very important for NAB's lawyers to try to throw some doubt on that. The judge saw through it, and he dismissed it. He examined Mr. Sufi's evidence. Now, that does not mean that what Sufi is saying about he having been pushed out of the whole thing isn't right. I'm not privy to what happened. I am inclined to believe Sufi in this strict sense, that after he had made the arrangements, he was pushed out. I'm inclined to believe that for one reason and one reason alone. I cannot believe that a man of Sufi's understanding of the law would agree to go along with that kind of an agreement. And yet, the other side of the story is also true, namely that Mr. Sufi had been warned in clear and explicit terms, and it's in the judgment of Sir Anthony Evans that I had told Mr. Sufi that the broadsheet is not in a state to be settled with. And yet somehow NAB went and settled with it. Only Allah knows why and the reason why and where the money went. I don't know. All I know is Tariq Malick knew that the company was in liquidation, and Jerry James knew that it was in liquidation, and Mr. Sufi knew that it was in liquidation because I told him.
Have you been asked now, or did you now offer in a serious way to the government to revive the contract? Because the impression being given over here is, okay, Mr. Mousavi had a nice run in the first go, so he's making all this noise, so he gets the contract again and makes another go, and that's the kind of talk that's going on over here, with all due respect.
Well, why would I want to have another go and be thrown out in 2003 and have to fight to 2021? Thank you, but no thank you. The genesis of that discussion is simply that we were alerted through our intelligence sources that money was sent from Saudi Arabia to a bank in Southeast Asia, and we alerted the government of Pakistan. And we thought if they had a scintilla of integrity, they would show some interest in knowing about it. When I saw Mr. Shahzad Akbar, he wasn't in the least bit interested. When I told him about the fake general who tried to shake us down, he wasn't in the least bit interested. What he was interested in, can you give us a discount? And I said, court orders are not the bazaar in which you haggle over the price of a carpet.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how credible would you rate this information about 1 billion? And if I were to ask you, what is the real probability of this money this asset being recovered?
At the time when we alerted them, 99.9%. Today, probably 0%. If I had $1 billion and people were talking about it in the media, I wouldn't hang around. I would take that money and run with it. So, the answer to your question on a probability of 1 to 10, 10 out of 10 at the time when we alerted them, about 0.00001 at the evening when we are having this conversation with you.
What is the total value of assets or monies that were received or recovered on with your efforts? What was the amount that the Pakistan government got back?
We were on the trail of billions. We had found the footprints of billions of dollars. I don't mean millions. You heard it right. Billions. A billion is 1,000 million. We were on the trail of billions of dollars. We found the footprint of billions of dollars of money that smelled. Money that is clean doesn't smell. In London, they say they trade trillions of dollars on foreign exchange. It doesn't smell. But billions of dollars of smelly money we were on the trail of. We were sabotaged and we were prevented from going after it. And the judge agreed that that's exactly what happened. Every time we came to close to money that NAB had no idea about, we were sabotaged. We were either directly asked to remove that person from our target, or in the case of Sherpal, when we froze the account and we alerted the government of Pakistan, you know what they did? Instead of coming and taking the money back to Pakistan, instead of doing as we'd requested, namely instruct the government of Jersey to seize that money and send it back, you know what they did? I'll tell you what they did. They opened the account, they gave the money back to Sherpal, and they appointed the Minister of Interior of Pakistan.
You said whenever we got close to money, NAB would sort of work it out and actually destroy the effort. Was that most of that money, was it with politically exposed people or was it other businessmen and stuff like that? How many people were you close to on, let's say, was it a set of 10 people, 20 people, 15, like what?
We came within a whisker of freezing the accounts of 27 either individuals or their alter egos or their companies or their front operations. And I maintain that we came within a whisker of returning to my masters, the people of Pakistan, billions of dollars. We were sabotaged.
I just need one thing. Can you name me one other major success that you've achieved in terms of asset recovery and all? Specific project, a specific endeavor that can back up your claims of being one of the best in this field?
Well, asset recovery is part of the human rights work. Human rights is about protection of the interests of the people versus the thieves who become governments. Those thieves eventually mutate into mafias that become governments. When the Supreme Court threw out Nawaz Sharif, the Chief Justice referred to the novel by Mario Puzo, The Godfather. In the fight against these criminal mafias, a small part of it is the fight against these thieves who steal money. You want to look at my record? Look what I achieved in Sweden. I managed to arrest, as a result of deep investigation, a man who was traveling on a false identity. He was one of the most notorious torturers and murderers serving the Islamic Republic of Iran. Google it, and you'll find on the 9th of November 2019, Mr. Hamid Nouri, when he arrived in the Stockholm airport, he was arrested by the war crimes unit of the Swedish police, thanks to me.
Do you have any high hopes of Mr. Imran Khan?
I have high hopes that Imran
When was the last time you talked to him?
That's confidential. I can't discuss that.
Days, weeks? That much you can indicate.
No, that's he was at Oxford, I was at Oxford. We have mutual friends. Let's just say, leave it at that.
जी आपने बात सुनी, मुसावी साहब की सारी बातें सुनी, फैसला तो आपने कर, लेकिन 2-3 सवाल बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट हैं। एक तो यह है कि इन्होंने, इमरान खान साहब ने भी कहा है कि हम इनसे बात करेंगे। हमें एक तो ये वाज़ेह होना चाहिए, क्योंकि मुसावी ने इस पर क्लियर जवाब नहीं दिया क्योंकि इमरान खान से बात हुई है या नहीं हुई। वी नीड टू नो कि क्या प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान का डायरेक्ट रब्ता हुआ है मुसावी साहब के साथ, और ये किस किस्म के रवाबत हैं कि जफ़र अली जैसा बंदा उठता है वो भी प्राइम मिनिस्टर को मिल लेता है और दूसरे लोग भी मिल लेते हैं। मुसावी साहब हैं, उनका हमें नहीं पता कि उनकी बात हुई है नहीं हुई है। ये बड़े डूबियस एलिमेंट्स हैं सारे के अंदर। इसकी बहुत कॉम्प्रीहेंसिव इंक्वायरी होनी चाहिए। और अगेन मैं बार बार कहता हूँ, फ्रॉम डे वन एक ऐसी कंपनी जिसकी हिस्ट्री नहीं थी, एक ऐसी कंपनी है जो 29,000 पाउंड के ऊपर डिसॉल्व हो जाती है, एक ऐसी कंपनी जो खुद पार्टनर्स एक दूसरे को नहीं पकड़ सके, वो एक दूसरे से फ्रॉड कर रहे हैं, उस कंपनी के ऊपर सारे पाकिस्तान की इंटेग्रिटी या उस पर आप सवाल उठने शुरू हो जाएं, तो ये बड़ा एक सीरियस क्वेश्चन है जिसको देखना होगा। ये बड़ी डिटेल्ड प्रोब चाहिए और इसमें कोई भी ना बचे, क्योंकि इट स्मैक्स ऑफ करप्शन। जिस दिन से शुरू हुआ और आज तक इस पर करप्शन का बहुत ज़्यादा तासुर मिल रहा है। इजाज़त दीजिए, अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।